What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast today. I hope you're all having a really good day, as I am as well. I always really try to have really good days on Wednesdays. Wednesdays are always the fun part of the week. You're halfway through the week, your work week is almost done. Your hair right over here, like mine, is all over the place because you've been working. But guess what? I am, of course, your host, Ethan Smith of the Locked On Pirates podcast. I hope you all, again, are having a wonderful day. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day every day, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I am Ethan Smith of the Locked On Pirates podcast. I like to introduce myself multiple times. That way you guys know the face, you know me. And today's episode, of course, is brought to you by Spotify Green Room. Spotify Green Room is the first social audio platform brought to you by sports fans from all over can talk about the MLB postseason. The NBA just kicked off yesterday. Hockey's back. Football's back. Every sport is back. We're in that really, really fun time of the year where even soccer and everything is going on right now as well. So you can head to Spotify Green Room, find me or other Locked On hosts there and talk about all the things you want to talk about in sports. I also want to let you guys know, as always, thank you for listening to this podcast. I enjoy that you guys hopefully make me your first listen of the day every single day, even if they come out in the mid-afternoon like this episode. But on today's podcast, we're going to talk about some starting pitching options in free agency for the Pittsburgh Pirates in 2022, as well as opening the mailbag to some of your questions here on today's episode. Even some questions that aren't about the Pirates, about some things that may have happened yesterday that were a little controversial that I may have tweeted about on Twitter at Locked On Pirates and at my Twitter right here at MVP_Ethan. But with that said, let's get into today's episode.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And again, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast today on Wednesday, October 20th. And as mentioned in the intro, we're going to be talking about some starting pitcher options for the Pittsburgh Pirates heading into the 2022 season, with the intent, from me at least, that they're probably looking to add some starters to the rotation next year after it got cut pretty thin with JT Brubaker, Bryce Wilson, and Miguel Yajure getting injured. But also, we're going to open the mailbag to some of your questions that were very interesting questions, and I'm very happy that everybody tuned in and let me get some questions today. So getting right into it, pitching, I think, is going to be one of the bigger things the Pirates focus on this upcoming season. I think they're really going to really nail it on the head right now in terms of, let's say, okay, last year they got Tyler Anderson after getting rid of Jamison Taillon and Joe Musgrove. Tyler Anderson, of course, probably the best pitcher on the staff early on in the early parts of the season, really ramped it up in the middle of the season, and then we traded him to Seattle, where he helped the Seattle Mariners almost get to the postseason. Of course, they were one game away. So I like that approach. I like the approach of the 1-year deal. But with so many young guys on the roster right now, I would really like to see the Pirates go after some guys and maybe sign them some 2 or 3-year deals. I don't know if I'd go 3, but 2 would probably be a good number. And there's plenty of candidates right now that have had really good years that the Pirates could look for in terms of free agency right now. And when we look at it, going down the list, there's a big list here. Zach Greinke, of course, will be a free agent. Pirates won't go after him. Trevor Bauer, don't. Justin Verlander, Clayton Kershaw, Max Scherzer, Johnny Cueto, Marcus Stroman, Kevin Gausman. I think they're going to stay away from those guys. Yushi Kikuchi, Alex Cobb. Those are kind of where you're going to get way too out of it with the money and stuff like that. So I am on Spot Track, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit as I'm scrolling with you guys right now. And then we start getting into the range where you see Michael Pineda, Carlos Martinez, Dylan Bundy, James Paxton, Robbie Ray. Robbie Ray is going to get a ridiculous bag from Toronto, I think. And you see some interesting names here. One of the names I want to go ahead and start with first, though, is Andrew Heaney. Andrew Heaney, of course, left-handed pitcher from the New York Yankees. He had a pretty good year. He was, of course, started the year as a Los Angeles Angel, was traded to the New York Yankees shortly after that. I think he could be a guy the Pirates really look for. Of course, after Tyler Anderson, they had really good luck with a veteran left-handed pitcher. So why not go try for another one, right? And there's realistically an option there. I think Heaney might stay in New York just because of the fact that New York needs the pitching help. They just really do. Jameson Taillon, of course, went down with an ankle injury that he's going to need surgery on. And shouts out to Jameson Taillon, probably one of the unluckiest baseball players and pitchers I've seen in the last half decade. And I liked what he was doing in New York. He looked really good in New York, but it was just tough for him to see him go down again with an injury. I wish him nothing but the best. But with Andrew Heaney, there's a real chance you could go after him. Now, of course, if you start getting outbid, this is going to be for everybody on this list. If you start getting outbid by a ridiculous amount of money, just don't even worry about it. I just wouldn't overpay for any of these guys. But Andrew Heaney on a nice 2-year deal, maybe 4 or 5 million a year, so about 2 years, 8 to 10 million. I think most people would be okay with that. I think that would be a pretty good deal for everyone involved. I think that he would add a very good element to the pitching staff, being a very good veteran presence. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. I think, you know, I've been stuck on Andrew Heaney a little bit on this one, but then we're going to move forward to one that I think is possible, but it's possible, but I do think he would rather want to go to a place where he's going to win immediately. And that's John Gray. John Gray, of course, so I believe he's had every single part of his career in Colorado as a Colorado Rocky. From what it looks like, it doesn't look like he's going to be back. I think they're really putting a lot of chips on the table for everyone else on that staff except John Gray. If the Pirates got John Gray, I would be elated. John Gray, of course, he's been a very good player across his career. I mean, he made $6 million this year. He's a former number one overall pick. He's 29 years old, so he fits that veteran mold. And bringing him in on a 2-year deal would be very nice as well. He's an unrestricted free agent. I mean, he's going to be there, very awesome. Like, he's going to be there, like, for the taking. And if the Pirates can really get in there and get something for him, that'd be nice. I mean, you see what he was working with over his contract for the last couple of years. 2019, 2.95 million. 2020, 5.6 million, and then he moved up to that $6 million figure in 2021. But if the Rockies decide, they say, we don't want to bring him back, then they don't bring him back. That's going to be very interesting to see. And he's a former former first round pick, top 5 overall out of Oklahoma. I mean, that's a flyer that you can take on a guy if you really want to. And I think John Gray would also very much help this staff. And John Gray and Andrew Heaney are probably the 2 names that I'm looking closely at. Martin Perez of the Boston Red Sox is another interesting one. He's a left-handed pitcher as well. Maybe, but then I like to scroll down a little bit more, kind of around that Tyler Anderson range where guys are making some money. And Jose Urena from the Detroit Tigers, I think he'll probably stay in Detroit. He went to Detroit after leaving the Miami Marlins, but he's another interesting guy that the Pirates could really go after. You look at some other names here, Mike Foltynewicz from the Texas Rangers, now formerly of the Atlanta Braves, could be a nice guy that you go after. Jared Eichhoff from the New York Mets. Just throwing a lot of names out there. That way you guys kind of get the idea of where the Pirates are going to be looking. They're probably going to be looking in about that age 28 to 33 range. That way these guys aren't increasingly old, but you could sign them to 2-year deals and pretty much expect to get pretty decent production out of these guys with the likes of Roenzi Contreras and Miguel Yajure and, all these other guys in the system that are going to be ready in the next 2 or 3 years, like a Quinn Priester, like a Carmen Mlodzinski, like a Jared Jones. And we brought up Jared Jones yesterday in terms of trading for Austin Meadows. Don't worry. I don't think that's going to happen. And that kind of runs down the list. Like Carlos Rodon is a free agent, probably out of the realm for the Pirates. Brett Anderson from Milwaukee, he'll probably stay in Milwaukee. Matt Shoemaker, I think he's a little too old. Alex Wood would be so fun here. I just don't think he's going to leave San Francisco after the kind of postseason that he had. Michael Lorenzen from the Cincinnati Reds, he would be an interesting another player that they could go grab. If they wanted to go spend a lot of money, though, Kevin Gausman would be fun, but I think he's going to stay in San Francisco and get a lot of money. Drew Smyly is another guy that they could go after in Atlanta. Marcus Stroman's going to stay with the Mets, I think. Yushi Kikuchi is going to probably stay in Seattle. Alex Cobb would be an interesting one from the Los Angeles Angels, but you're seeing where we're getting with this is there is a plethora of options for veteran pitching in this offseason. And I'll talk about the relief pitching tomorrow. This is the starting pitching side of things. I'll talk about relief pitching options tomorrow because the Pirates are definitely going to have to go bring in some relievers when realistically you look at the relievers they have right now. It's really only David Bednar, Chashawn Shreve, and Chris Stratton. That's really all you got. Like, I mean, they're going to throw other guys in there, obviously, just because of what they have. But the bullpen saw the most turnover, and so did the starting pitching for all intents and purposes. Seeing Max Kranick in there, Yuri De Los Santos go in the bullpen, Chad Kuhl moved to the bullpen, and then, of course, Bryce Wilson ends the season with an injury. Yahure never gets back from his injury. You saw a lot of turnover with pitching this year. And for the Pittsburgh Pirates, I think you really need to focus on making that a priority this offseason. So I want to know on Twitter. I brought it up the other day about the outfielding options. I'm going to run another poll on Twitter later today at Locked On Pirates. Who would you like to see the Pirates bring in at the starting pitcher spot? I like to throw these things at you guys because I know you always like to include your input, and I love having your input as well because it gives me ideas to talk about things on the podcast. And as well, as mentioned earlier, if you want to ever talk to me or talk to other fans about baseball, basketball, football, hockey, whatever sport, make sure you go to Spotify Green Room. Spotify Green Room, of course, is the first social audio platform that brings sports fans together. Join live rooms with celebrities, insiders, athletes, all these other people. They'll all be talking about anything in sports. It was popping yesterday with the start of the NBA season with the Warriors and the Lakers and the Nets and the Bucks and two big marquee matchups. A lot of hockey rooms have been going on lately, baseball playoff rooms, football rooms every Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday with college football and the NFL. Spotify Green Room, of course, is available on all iOS devices. You'll see it. It's a pretty simple thing to see. It's a Spotify logo, and then it says Green Room under it. So you can find it there. I believe it's also on other webs or other things now as well. So make sure you go to Spotify Green Room. I will probably be hosting around the offseason to get your instant takes on a lot of what the Pittsburgh Pirates are going to be doing this offseason. But as of right now, I'm kind of staying off of it. But I know a ton of Locked On hosts that are staying on it. So make sure you go find them. Make sure you do all that fun stuff. And make sure that you talk the best sports that you can on Spotify Green Room. Now we're going to open the mailbag today. And we got 4 questions that I wanted to go over. Got some questions here near the late end. So if you guys send me any, I am recording right now and I asked for your late questions. So if you send any on Twitter, I will see them here as well and maybe get to them. But the first one I wanted to go ahead and start with because it's kind of recent is from Margot, who is one of the friends of the podcast. And you'll see the questions down here as well as I'm talking is this wasn't the full question, but it basically got to the point. Why are umpires so bad in important moments? Well, so yesterday, if you don't know, Margot is a big Red Sox fan. She's a big Celtics fan, big Patriots fan, all Boston sports pretty much. She's a big friend of the podcast. She's a part of another coalition that I am with a bunch of friends in sports. And her Twitter is linked right there below as well. So you'll see the names and then Twitter below these questions. But Margot, if you guys don't know what Margot is referencing, last night against the Astros and Red Sox game, there was a pretty bad no strike call against the Red Sox where there's been still pictures that have come out where you can literally see the baseball. Like, here's the base, and you can literally see the baseball like kind of inside the corner so that it would have been called a strike usually. Of course, it wasn't. And after that, the game just blew up in the Red Sox face. It was 2-2 at that time, maybe even 3-2 at that time. And then the Astros just said, okay, well, we're going to take advantage of this. Michael Brantley, I believe, cleared, or it was either Jose Altuve or Michael Brantley cleared the bases, made it 7-2, and then they scored 2 more. So it was 9-2. Umpires, it like in the important moments, this is something that happens all the time, Margot. Like this is something that is a constant problem in baseball is umpires are just awful, which is why robo umps are going to probably be here pretty soon. I won't lie to you. Robo umps will be here soon. They will be. It's a very big thing that's just going to happen at some point. And I think it just gets more amplified in these big moments. Like we've seen 2 already now where like and both of them included, well, they didn't both include the Dodgers and Giants game, like that ended that series on the check swing. It wasn't a check swing. It wasn't. He did swing like he was checking it, but I hate the rule that, oh, well, his intent was a swing, so he's out. No. If it doesn't go past that certain line, it's not a swing. And to end a series on that against two teams that had over 105 wins on the season in a spot where it's game 5, winner or go home. Not saying the Giants now would have done anything with that, but ending a series that way, especially with it being the wrong call, that was probably where it got a little weird with people. And same thing here. If the Astros go and win this series against the and win this series now, if they go and win this series now against the Boston Red Sox, you're going to go back and look on this and say, what if that never gets called? Now, I'm not saying the Astros, again, wouldn't have scored there and still done the same thing. That's very plausible to say with that offense that they would have went and still scored some runs. But that would have shut everything down in its tracks to the point where Boston would have still had a chance to win that game in the bottom of the ninth inning instead of it being a 7-run game in the bottom of the ninth inning and it basically being done. Which is crazy because if you really look at those, like the first 4 games of the Boston Houston series, none of them have been particularly close except the first one with Altuve and Correa hitting those big home runs and Correa doing this, which I've loved that Dame time has turned over to Major League Baseball now after Correa has done that. And the thing that's crazy is with the umpires too, robo umps, it sounds like a good idea. It really does, but they need to make sure that they institute it and properly do it, because if you make a strike zone that is set in one spot, a guy like Jose Altuve, who is probably shorter than me, and I'm 5'9", 5'10", versus a guy like Aaron Judge, who's 6'7", you're going to have to find the medium between having these different heights. Like, look at O'Neal Cruz on the Pirates, for example. Is his strike zone going to be the same as the strike zone that Brian Reynolds faces? No, it's not. So you're going to have to find ways to do that. There's plenty of technology to do that. I'm sure with the talk of it happening, they probably already have it set in stone for it to happen. But Margot, my answer to why are umpires so bad in important moments, I couldn't really tell you. Again, I just think it's mistakes that we see all the time just get amplified in these big moments. But I appreciate your question, and I hope the best for the Red Sox in the next 3 games, and hopefully the umpires don't get in the way of that series either way. Now, here's a little fun question that we had, as I'll go ahead and take that off the screen, from an old coworker of mine, actually, Mr. Tom Neary on Facebook. As I asked him a question on Facebook, he said, how long did they play baseball before mitts were invented? So I had to Google this one because I was obviously not alive when mitts were invented. But way back in the late 1800s, there's a player, I believe, for the Reds. They weren't in, I don't know if they were in Cincinnati yet, but they were called the Reds at the time. And he injured his left hand and he was catching, I think, and this was before obviously they had like mitts and stuff. At the time, railroad workers had like gloves, so that was where a lot of it came from. I think is railroad workers like were wearing gloves, so baseball players saw that and said, "Hey, maybe if a baseball is coming at me super fast, I don't want to catch it with my bare hand." So this guy injured his hand, and I read this whole story, and so he said, "I'm going to put a glove on," and he did, and it helped him, and his hand got better. And then after a while, every player in Major League Baseball just kind of kept picking up on it, you know? They just kept moving forward with it. And then, of course, we see what we have today with all the different brands like Louisville Slugger, Russell, all the like big brands that make gloves nowadays. That's where we've kind of been now. And that's kind of the backstory behind it. I don't know the exact day or time that they were made, but I appreciate that question. I thought it was a pretty fun question to include in today's podcast. Thank you, Tom, friend of the podcast, for listening to that there. And before we answer our next 2 questions, we're going to go ahead and let you know that today's episode is, of course, brought to you by the best staying protein bars on the market, Built Bar. Built Bar, of course, is the best tasting protein bar on the market. They have 9 different unique flavors ranging from cherry barcia, German chocolate, cookies and cream, my favorite cookies and cream, and many others. If you want to try all of them, make sure you try a mix box where you can get 18 Built Bars. And also, they sent me these pumpkin Paranormal Pumpkin Puffs. They are very good. I put them in my freezer usually all the time. They come out awesome. I absolutely love them. They're all 100% chocolate covered, and best of all, they're even good for you too. They have 3 to 5 grams of sugar, 5 grams of net carbs, and 130 to 180 calories. They are also the sponsor of the U.S. track and field team, which is pretty neat. So when you go to builtbar.com, make sure you use that promo code LOCKED15 and you will receive 15% off of your next order when you invest in the best protein bars on the market. And with that said as well, with everything I've been talking about with all these sports today, make sure you head to Bet Online for all of your sports betting action. We're back in better than ever. All eyes are on the ice, the court, the diamond, and the gridiron as teams are back for all of the seasons going on at once. It's the sports equinox, baby. The sports equinox is back. As always, Bet Online is your number one spot for all of your action this season. With a new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests, Bet Online continues to be the number one source for everything football. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Don't forget to use our promo code LOCKEDON, which you'll see at the bottom of the screen, to receive that bonus with your first deposit. From football, basketball, hockey, baseball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. Bet Online is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. Bet Online, where the game starts. Now, we have 2 more questions today. One is from more than a friend of the podcast. One is from my father, Mr. Bradley Smith, as he asks, who is the best outfielder that the Pittsburgh Pirates have ever had? Now, this is an interesting question because most people would go with Roberto Clemente immediately. Clemente has the rapport, he has the reputation, he has the championships. Of course, his career got cut short due to due to the plane crash, not the injury that was kind of off. I really said that if he did not pass away in that plane crash, he would have been the best outfielder of all time. And he even really still has a stake in that anyway. But if you're looking at other names as well outside of Clemente to make this really fun, Dave Parker was a really great at right fielder along with Willie Stargell in the 70s and in the 70s era. Bobby Bonilla, lifetime or still getting all that check from the Mets. He was a great player for the Pittsburgh Pirates back in the day. Barry Bonds was an NL MVP with the Pittsburgh Pirates. You have plenty of names. You could throw Andrew McCutchen in there as well as a big name. And I'm probably forgetting some here as well, honestly, that you guys can help me out with for future reference. But I think Clemente still has to be the top guy. I really can't sit there and justify saying that he isn't just because Clemente, I mean, you look at, they have a day for the guy still. And realistically, you have to look at it from the idea that Roberto Clemente really just revolutionized baseball. Like you would not see Dominican players, you wouldn't see all of these guys who are really there make a case for what's going on. And look at how many walk-offs we've seen by Puerto Rican players in this entire MLB postseason so far. It's been awesome to see, and I really enjoy it. But if I had to name somebody other than Clemente, I'd probably say Bonds or Parker, probably lean more towards Dave Parker, just because I think Dave Parker was awesome. I've seen him play through film and stuff, and I really expect to see what he could do. Now, to our final question with some news that actually came up today. Should the Pittsburgh Pirates consider Jacob Cruz as their next hitting coach? This one, of course, from our friend Gary Morgan of the podcast, who's on every Monday, who said in the exact tweet that Jacob Cruz has been told he can look for another gig by Milwaukee should the Pirates consider him for the hitting coach. If you don't know who Jacob Cruz is, he has been all around the world. He's 48. He used to play for the Cincinnati Reds back in 2004, 2005, actually way more than that, actually, if we go really far. He started his career in 1996 with the San Francisco Giants, career 105 RBIs, 729 at-bats, and 409 games played. And Jacob Cruz, of course, we'll see what he can do. It'd be kind of cool to have Jacob Cruz being the hitting coach teaching O'Neal Cruz. That'd be really cool. But the Pirates will be on the hunt for a new hitting coach. Jacob Cruz, I'm sure, with the familiarity within the division, will definitely probably get a good look-see from Ben Cherington. But this is something that I will definitely be monitoring the situation behind to see if the Pirates are going to look into Jacob Cruz as their next hitting coach. And they should highly consider him. I mean, why not? I mean, Milwaukee didn't have the greatest offense this year, but their offense was not terrible either, if that makes sense. But from all intents and purposes, I think Jacob Cruz would be a very good hitting coach, but I'm sure the Pirates have a plethora of options elsewhere as well. And with that said today, guys, thank you all so much for your questions. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Locked On Pirates. Make sure you go check out the Locked On MLB podcast with our pal Paul Francis Sullivan, but please call him Sully. On tomorrow's episode, we're going to be previewing some options the Pirates have for relief pitching heading into the 2022 MLB season, as well as everything else that happens in the world of baseball with 2 playoff games again today. And also, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Pirates. You can follow me on Twitter below on the screen at MVP_Ethan. I love you all so much. Thank you all for tuning in. And until next time, I will see you on the flip side.